Yeah, are you still with me?
I'm here.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time today to chat with me.
Thanks for having the interest.
Absolutely. Well, I've been a fan probably the past 15 years or so I thought, why the heck
All right.
not?
Why the heck not? That's what we're here to do, is talk to each other.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to recently.
Well, I'm focusing on retrovirus. That's why we're coming to San Francisco, which is a retrospective of my massive 40-year musical so-called career. I'm doing workshops for spoken word in Berlin. I'm going to do one in August. I'm about to release an album called Marquesa, which is the philosophy of Desaad and my writings that have been influenced by him with music that I did. That's out in September, called Marquesa. And I have a book of essays coming out called So Real It Hurts. So the usual. I'm doing everything.
That's the only way to do it these days.
Well, right after San Francisco, we go to Australia and Tasmania, which is exciting.
Nice. That's really exciting.
I've been to Australia a few times before. I've worked with quite a few Australians, and but Tasmania, that's a new frontier.
Oh, that's really interesting. What is it like when you travel, tour abroad to other countries and meet the fans over there?
Well, look, I don't look at anybody as a fan. I look at them as individuals that come to the show because I guess they're seeking something they can't find anywhere else. I don't look at an audience like an audience. I look at them as, who the hell is this collective of individuals that decided to leave their house all on the same night? It's not as if I'm a popular commodity that's going to inspire just unknowing people to come out and get their heads blown off in more ways than one.
Well, that's something we can look forward to this weekend.
Well, the band is so fantastic that it's really fun to, a lot of the material that I'm doing, that was never played live because, the trajectory of my musical career was I had a concept, I found collaborators, I found a way to document it. Sometimes we went on tour, sometimes we didn't. So, I have, this pretty immense body of work, and a lot of these songs were just never even done live, so it's great to breathe new, violent life into these perverse little ditties.
And what's your experience been like in the past when you've been to the Bay Area?
Well, I lived in Richmond for 2 years, and I've been going to San Francisco since, the late 70s, I guess. I don't know what it's like now because I haven't been there in a while. Every place is changing.
Right.
There's great people everywhere. Most places suck at this point because the economy is so not in the favor of any independent or alternative people. It's just very difficult everywhere. But, there's great people everywhere. We hold out. We're stubborn. We keep going.
It's the spirit of the artist.
Well, it's the spirit of, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want to do, whether you like it or not.
Absolutely.
And we've all faced that.
Yes, I agree. I've definitely seen my fair share. So if people,
exactly.
So if people want to find out more about you online, what's the best site for them to?
Well, probably my Facebook site or my official website, and it's LydiaLunchOfficial.net. There's got a lot of stuff on there. Everything is online now. There's so many performances I've never even seen that I've done that are on YouTube. I'm actually right now. I know. I guess I did that. I'm in the process right now of trying to sell my archives. I own everything I've ever done, which is very unusual for anybody who's. I don't feel like I've been involved in the music industry. I did music. I was never involved in the quote unquote music industry. I've always been. I've never been on. I've been on one major. It wasn't even a major label, which was Z Records, which put out my album Queen of Siam back in the early '80s. But I've always released everything independently. And will continue to do so. But since I own everything, I'm in the process of trying to sell my archives to somebody that would form a digital museum so that people could just go 1984, spoken word, what was she doing? 1992, music, what was she doing? That would be great. And I'm looking for someone to house this vast accumulation of stuff. I've done especially so many live performances in Europe with musicians that people have never, seen or heard in America, which would be, and I have all the live footage, which would be great to get someone to, pick that up. I just sent out like 46 packages. That's the first round. Good luck.
It's
someone might do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a load of work for anybody who wants to take it on because, there's so many formats. I mean, also, technology has changed a lot of things. So I've got so many formats of performances, VHSs, mini discs, DVDs, whatever. It's kind of an outrage. I mean, I opened the hard disk that was everything, and I just have to close it. I'm like, all right, enough. I'm still doing shit. I have stuff to do.
The story continues, right?
It does not stop. Somebody has got to be out there, as a mouthpiece. So.
Where do you see yourself in the next couple of years? Will you still be touring? Will you still be
Well, of course. Of course I'm going to continue to record, and I'm going to continue to tour because, and especially, I think next year, because I have this essay book coming out, I'm going to try to concentrate more on spoken word because it's so mandatory in this time of, chronic, arrogant, bullshit, lying, predatory behavior, which I've been speaking about since I opened my mouth. Everything I was complaining about under Ronald Reagan is exactly what it is now. It's the same. I feel like a broken record almost, but the story remains the same, and somebody's got to be out there protesting it. I performed with Umar bin Hassan. He's one of the last poets. The last poets were radical black poets out of New York in the early 70s that did The Revolution Will Not Be Televised and This Is Madness. And we performed together in New York on Martin Luther King Day. And as Martin Luther King said, he had a dream. Well, I have a fucking nightmare, and it's Donald Trump. That was my speech.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
We're living through it now, right? Unfortunately.
Oh, to me, it's always been apocalypse forever. I mean, it's so outlandish and so outrageous. It's just to the nth degree. I mean, there has to be a backlash because it can't get any more hilarious and awful. It's so awful that I just basically people are crying, I'm laughing. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Well, thank you for talking about it and putting it out there and taking a stand. Because I don't think that there's enough of that, to be honest with you.
There's a lot of great writers on the internet, and there's not, when I first started doing spoken word, I think there's still the same small handful of people, like Jello Biafra and Maxine Cervenka and Rollins, and there's, and John Cooper Clarke, and there's not many more. And it's needed more now than ever. The problem, too, with doing spoken word is there's not that many venues for it. It's far easier for me to do, like I have this thing I do with Weasel Walter called Brutal Measures, and it's just drums and vocals. And we tour Europe a lot with that. And even though English is not the first language, I understand exactly what I'm saying, and there's venues to do this in. We did a tour of the Midwest. There's not enough shows on the West Coast to come out and do this. We've done it a few times in L.A. Mm-hmm. But, it's so mandatory for me to do spoken word because somebody's got to be up there with the bullhorn.
Absolutely. Well, if you're ever in the Mission District of San Francisco and you feel the need,
I'll be the one on the corner with the bullhorn. I'll be up the one on the corner with the bullhorn and the top hat. People can go to get, my Bandcamp page and hear a lot of stuff. Like I have a Bandcamp page, and Brutal Measures is on there, and there's a bunch of other early spoken word stuff. And I love that I really like that people can just go listen to shit. And, listen to it for free. Donate if you want. Doesn't matter. I never expected people to be paying my rent, and they don't. That's why I go on tour. But it's great to have Bandcamp and put a lot of stuff that, I won't physically re-release again, but is still there for people to go and, I would say enjoy. I'm not sure that's the right word, but why not?
Why not?
They can scream their head. They can let me scream their head off for them. There we go.
The outlet, the creative outlet.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what inspired you to become a musician and get into the spoken word realm? Well,
literature inspired me to do spoken word, but there was no spoken word when I landed in New York in '76, it was, it was the Beat Poets were over, Lenny Bruce was over, Patti Smith was doing her rock and roll poetry, and so I had to form a band first, and then I had to start curating my own spoken word shows, which is at the same time that Biafra and Exene and Henry Rollins started doing it. They were on the West Coast, but somehow we all simultaneously started at the same time doing spoken word because it was and we couldn't fucking take it. So, I had to literally, and I still do curate spoken word shows. Last year I did a 4-month stint at the Roxy Hotel in New York, all women doing spoken word and out jazz. So I continue to curate because you have to do everything. When you're me, you have to, you just do it all. You want to do it, you do it.
That's the only way to get it done.
Exactly. Well, that's why you have your own podcast.
Absolutely, you got that right.
And exactly.
The station that I'm at was actually inspired by the Beat Poets in San Francisco.
Fantastic. There we go.
Yeah.
I taught at the Naropa Institute, which Ellen Ginsberg and Ann Waldman and Kerouac, it's called, the School of Disembodied Poets. I taught there a few years ago, which was great. And back to, these workshops that I do, I'd love to do one in San Francisco. I've done them in Ojai, in New York, in France, Manchester. And basically they're for women, spoken word workshops, like most women write, or you keep a journal or whatever. How do you take it to the stage? And I think this is very empowering for people. I try to do it exclusively for women because, why shouldn't we have covens? Yeah, There we go. It's called From the Page to the Stage. So actually, right when you called, I was just writing up a little blurb for this, for what I'm doing in August in Berlin at this pop culture event for spoken word. So,
do you think that people in Europe are more receptive to your projects?
Well, they always have been because basically the venues are more. There's more different kinds of venues, and people don't try to pigeonhole you. They just consider you an artist. So, all right, if you're doing spoken word or you're doing illustrated word or you're doing music or you're having an exhibition, they kind of view it just as what you do. So they're not trying to paint you as, however they try to. I just consider myself as a no-wave artist because that's no wave, let me define it. Audience unfriendly. Not that I'm unfriendly to my audience, because they're individuals, dissident, disturbed, and much to do more towards the surrealist or the Dadaist, because we do deal with absurdity. The music has often been absurd. And I consider what I do, I still consider that I'm a no-wave artist. I'm not post-punk, I'm not punk, I never did punk rock music. No-wave is outside of all of this, and it's only defined by how different it all is from each other. So if you go back to like the quote-unquote seminal no-wave album No New York, which had the Contortions, Mars and DNA, nobody sounded like anybody else, but we were also outside of everything else, that was the connective tissue.
Do you feel that yourself and women that were part of the no-wave movement were predating what's happening now in terms of, women's rights and Me Too and all this stuff that's...
Well, the interesting thing about New York at that period, I'm talking the late 70s, is there were so many women involved in photography, filmmaking, music, art, and because it was post-60s sexual revolution, gender was not an issue then. Nobody felt that sex mattered, but your own sex didn't matter. There's always been harassment and there's always been antagonism. There's always been rape and violence. There's always been inequality. There's always been gender injustice. But within that circle and that time, we didn't feel it because we didn't let gender stop us. And there was no one telling us what to do. And if anybody dared to harass us, a quick kick in the nuts would have ended that story quite quickly. We were not afraid to grab somebody. Oh, grab them by the pussy. I say grab them by the fucking nuts and twist. The story's over, honey. Trust me. I don't care how big a bear is. You twist his nuts, he's going down. That's how we dealt with it.
It's amazing. And do you feel like that mentality got lost somehow in the 80s?
Oh, thank you, darling. Yeah, I do. I feel that people became precious. And it's bizarre because, I mean, we were so unhinged, didn't care, promiscuous, liberated, outrageous. And what's happening now, look, the word has got to be out. We know, I mean, but I've been talking about the patriarchy raping the planet and everybody on it for many years. My first spoken word piece was called Dearest. I've been attacking this issue for decades. I don't like that it took so long for so many women to find their voice, to scream out into the void. This is what's painful to me right now. And also, I don't like, you can't paint every act of harassment or flirting or stupidity with the same brush. Because people that have been traumatized and have been raped, that is really on a far side of the scale from, he grabbed my ass. You know what? He grabs your ass, you twist his nuts. It's really that simple. And what's most disappointing to me is these were not children that were assaulted. Look, it is hard to fight off a bear, but I'm sad that mothers haven't taught their daughters how to defend themselves and that fathers haven't taught their sons that just because you came out of a pussy doesn't mean you have to keep trying to go back in there every day of your fucking life, kid.
Absolutely. I agree.
I know it's the golden garden of all mystery, but have a little respect. And women, get tough.
And that can be taught, and that can be learned.
And that should be taught to girls from the age of 5. If somebody touches you and you don't like it, you scream in their face, you punch them in the nuts, you run away. You know, if you get into a game that you know is skewered against you, where basically it's about being a high-paid call girl, you have to really watch what you're getting involved in, you know. That is not to downplay the need that this needs to be expressed, because it certainly does. The need, as we talked about, and people, especially rapists, need to be called out, for sure.
Absolutely.
It's a big subject, but, you know.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. But
and not every story is the same. Not every story is the same, and not every action is the same. But it's got to be out there, and I'm glad it's out there now. But we also have to start taking some responsibility and teaching our daughters and sons responsibility. And also not to be so precious in the meantime either. We can't go from one extreme to the other, you know.
Finding a middle ground.
Yes, understanding what reality is, and understanding that it's far worse in many other places, but understanding in certain circumstances you have to avoid getting into that circumstance. That's why I mastered the throat punch and the ball twist.
Did that?
Two easy moves, honey, 2 easy moves.
Did that come into fruition when you were living on the mean streets of New York?
Very rarely, because basically I would treat any kind of aggro with humor. I would deflect. It's funny because I saw Connie Chung give an interview the other day, and she was one of the first female broadcasters and Asian American broadcasters. And she said when she was harassed, we're saying like the 70s, 80s, she would just say to them, "Excuse me, you're just not attractive enough to me." Shrinky dink. I thought that was such a good way of dealing with it.
Oh my gosh.
I'd walk down the street and people would, in New York in the late 70s, you were harassed every 10 steps. But you couldn't be a verbal boxer because you wear yourself out. So I would just go, "That's right, baby, that's right. I know I look good. Keep going. You can't have none. You know you want it. See you later." And they would laugh. Confused. You gotta, you can't shoot every dog just because they're a dog.
Put them in their place.
That's right, and some of them have to be caged, and that would mean prison. Absolutely. There we go. There we go.
So who inspired you, male or female, to become an artist?
Hubert Selby, Henry Miller, Jean Genet, Marquis de Sade, Violet Leduc, which many people don't know in this country but should look up, Unica Zorn, who was a surrealist writer, Anais Nin, writers mainly. Because to me, it's always been about the words, even though it's, geez, the music is machine gun to the bullet of my words. It's always been about the words.
Especially these days with the internet, the power of, social media?
I don't partake. I mean, I have somebody run my Facebook. You're my friend if you look me in the eye and you want to talk to me. You're not my friend just because you push a button. I'm sorry. I don't do Instagram, Twitter. I don't work social media because I don't have the time and I don't have the interest. I want to talk to people directly, one-on-one. Then we'll see if we can be friends. Not just because you like what I like. It just doesn't work that way for me. I'm glad that it's there and that people can feel more included in things, but I also feel it's highly addictive and it's disappointing to people and they get too caught up in bullshit and they lose normal communication skills, like how to react with real people. And that's what I do. I do intimate performances. I want to look into everybody's eyes. That's the bottom line.
The craziest show that you've ever performed live?
I don't know, there's just too many to call. I used to have to insert violence into my show to prevent violence from happening. Because men, it was always men, drunken men, that would be aggressive or stupid. So at one point for a short while, and actually in San Francisco, I would have to insert fake violence into my spoken word to prevent people from being idiotic. Men that would be drunk. Yeah, just to calm them down.
Yeah. Do you still?
Well, I guess one of my favorite incidents is I must have been an idiot. I was opening for the Rollins Band, spoken word, opening for Rollins Band at a fat bar in Cleveland, I think. And somebody yells out, "Show me your tits." Which, look, my tits have been plastered in on a lot of my films. They're only tits, honey. They're only fucking tits. So I flashed my tits, and I used to carry a police mag light in a black shack because I had to for the spoken word shows. And I said, "Now, show me your dick." And the Rollins Band pulled his pants down. And I said, that's why they call this a mag. That's why they call this a mag light. I need a magnifying glass to see it. No more heckling. All right, stuff like that. Yeah, stuff like that. Or one more example. I was at this, I think this might have been in Seattle, I'm not sure. It was a festival called The Feminist and the Misogynist together at last. They didn't know what I was. I'm a misanthropist. I hate everybody equally, trust me. I hate as many women as I do men. I don't hate anybody individually. You know what I'm saying? Some guy from the back goes, suck my dick. Stupidly, when I tell him to come up here, he does. I took my black check out and whacked him in the neck. He fell to his knees. I said, now suck your own dick. No more heckling. That's what I used to have to do. People know better now. I think they've learned. Yeah.
Learned a thing or two.
I think people learned a thing or two.
That's good. And what music?
We won't have any of that nonsense. We won't have any of that nonsense in Retrovirus. It's going to be, it's like the rock and roll of the apocalypse.
Well, we're looking forward to it. It's going to be at the Rickshaw Stop on Van Ness and Fell Street in San Francisco. Have you played there before?
I don't think so. That's June 9th. That's this coming Saturday. Well, I don't know when this podcast is going out or if it's live. It's June 9th. Can't wait.
Woohoo! Well, it was a pleasure talking with you and looking forward to the show at the Rickshaw Stop and hearing some old material as well as the new.
Exactly. Thanks very much for your interest and have a great time. I'll see you there.
Have a good time.
Take care.
You too. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.